Hi, my name is Shannon Turner. I saw abuse growing up, and I kind of dated right into what I deemed was normal. Growing up, it was, I love my mama, but she too fell into the pattern of, from what I understand, of what she saw. And then about when I was 9 or 10, she had met someone and the relationship progressed rather quickly. And then I got to see how things are happening. They're doing something. Now I've learned it's gaslighting. You're just kind of like, that didn't feel right. I didn't like the way that he said that. I was shoved, but was I really shoved? Did that really get, maybe I'm misconstruing all of this. And of course the abuser is gaslighting. It's your fault. And if you weren't so nagging, I wouldn't do this, and things of that nature. So I learned very quickly to doubt my instincts. Basically, growing up in that household, you were on eggshells because in any moment he was going to explode. But I remember a couple of times my mom would end up with big bruises on her arm. And I remember instinctively one time that she had called the cops, but this was back in the 80s, where the cops deemed they had to see it happening. And said boyfriend knew that. So when the cops were coming out, he took off before they got there. Him telling her nobody's going to ever love you like I do, and really, really tearing her down. But when she made the decision to break, it was amazing. But yeah, so growing up, it was everything was under scrutiny. I was a young kid. If I cried, then I needed to act like an adult. So I learned to not show emotion, and then you're acting too much like an adult. And I'm like, I don't know what you want me to say. So I remember one night he ended up, I don't know how, but my mom and I ended up sleeping in the living room because they had gotten in an argument, and we had a pull-out sofa, and he came and sat in a chair directly looking over us. And I can't remember if that went on all night because I had blocked a lot of childhood out. But yeah, it was just not knowing the right words to say and not knowing how to act, because if I was here, I was supposed to be here. And if I was here, I was supposed to be there. But it got me very conditioned that that's just normal and that's how men are, and, you know, try to save them. But I learned later, that's not my job to save anyone. I learned how to disassociate when things were happening, and I would go to said happy place. I just remember I'd be like, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom, and I'm going to raise my kids, and I'm going to make sure they're safe, and I'm going to have a wonderful husband. I will say now I am living out what I envisioned back then. I was the hopeless romantic, and still to this day, Valentine's Day trumps Christmas for me. But yeah, it was my wanting so badly to have what I didn't have growing up, and I rushed things. There were so many red flags with my ex-husband. Fortunately, growing up, I didn't know any red flags to look for. I did not even know what red flags were, because I was so conditioned that this is how men act. So when I met my ex-husband, I was flattered at first that he wanted to know where I was all the time. And I was flattered that he wanted me to call him when I got home to make sure I got home correctly. I did not understand that what he was doing was control. I thought that was love. I thought, well, this is what I saw growing up. I was a front lobby receptionist at the company that I had worked at, and we were getting a new security officer, and he kept coming to my desk, and again, I was living in fairy tale land, and I wanted to be married, and he was paying attention to me, and I was like, well, surely God had sent him to me. He said the right things, but my knower was like, I don't even know. I don't know if I even like him like this, but he is paying attention to me. 2 to 3 weeks into really getting to know him, I literally said, I think we'll be better off as friends. But I saw that hurt his feelings, which then made me feel like I had to fix it. And I was like, well, if I don't love him right now, eventually maybe I can. And then once I let my guard fully down, I did fall in love with him. I remember a few of the times, because he lived probably about an hour away, So I would go see him and he would drive me home and everything. And if I said the wrong things at some point that night when we were together, when he drove me home for that whole hour, the radio would be turned up so loud that basically it was, you can't speak, you made me mad. I kind of saw similar behavior growing up and I thought this was normal. I didn't like it per se, because I didn't like it back then, but I just thought this is how relationships are. He did woo me a little bit in the beginning. Looking back now, I'm like, those were red flags. Things would happen, and at that time, it's kind of like, all right, maybe I did say something wrong, and maybe that is why the music is blaring, or maybe he just really likes this song. It was never like he literally silent treatment me. So I had an hour to come up with all these scenarios on what that could have meant. Even looking back now, I don't know what set him off. It would just be like, all of a sudden I'm not talking to Shannon, which then would cause me to go, what's going on? And, fluctuate from being really internally nervous to overly trying to talk, which would deepen the silent treatment and me going, is this the best there is for me? But it must be, because he's paying attention to me. And then when he started to go into church with me, I was like, oh yes, okay, now we're going in the right direction. Even looking back all these years later, I could see that's where trouble started, but I can't even pinpoint, so to speak, on what started the trouble, but I can tell you that every one of my friends and family that met him, so my biggest piece of advice would be, no matter what's going on here, if nobody likes him, listen, they would be like, he's arrogant, he's this, he that, and I'm like, oh, he's misunderstood. And I can help him. Everybody was like, what are you doing? If your father is getting ready to walk you down the aisle and your father parks his truck close by the door and literally tells you, daughter, you don't need to go through this. I parked my truck right there. We can leave. As you're getting ready to walk down the aisle, listen to said father. But what I did is I looked into the church that was full of people and I said, I can't do that. There's too many people here. He asked me to marry him by proposing to me in church. It was something I had expressed that I thought would be like really romantic. And so he did it. And I was like, oh, look at this. He's my Prince Charming. He's asking me to marry him. It's going to be great. Yes, he's been a jerk, but it'll of course get better. He ended up hanging out because I lived with my mom at the time, and he would be over all the time. And when I asked him, hey, I want some mommy time, he would be like, what, you don't want me here? And then create this whole scenario all about him. My mom could see what was happening. My dad could see what was happening. My mom and dad were happily divorced, I'll say that. But my dad would come over frequently and he would be like, I just think he is a jerk. I don't like him. And I remember that they had the bridal shower for me. And of course, some of my girlfriends bought the skimpy stuff to wear on like honeymoon night. And he literally scolded them. He happened to show up after the bridal shower and scolded them on, they were Christian women, why were they buying me that type of stuff? And my mom was like, he is such an, and she was like, you don't have to marry him. And I go, people have already started buying gifts. Like, it was never, but I'm so in love with him. I just felt so obligated now. And that I was going to make the best out of whatever situation it was. So the wedding morning, my dad's like, are you okay? Are you really sure? And I'm like, all morning. I was like all morning, everybody's, are you really wanting to do it? Yes. Because up until that time, I always viewed abuse as being slapped and hit, nothing else. So up to that time, no hands had been laid on. So I was like, he's just a jerk. Men are jerks. It's what they do. So there was nothing really to it. So we ended up finding out we were pregnant with Josh probably 2 to 3 months later. And he was a doting husband when I was pregnant. Oh my gosh. Even as bad as he turned out, it was the fairy tale life that I had envisioned when I was a kid. And then we brought Joshua home. And the first night of Joshua coming home, he cried like babies cry. And I watched my jerk of a husband completely begin within 24 hours turned into like a monster, screaming, yelling, shut that kid up. And I'm like, what is happening? I just remember like he was jealous that there was somebody taking attention away from him, even though it was his son. And so then it started being where Josh didn't even like being held by him because he would scream so much. I remember delivering papers in the middle of the night and taking Josh with me in my car and getting third shift jobs and stuff that I could take him with me, because there wasn't the physical violence in the very beginning, but I was like, I don't want to leave that door open. And I didn't think I could get out of the marriage and stuff and have my son remain with me unless I was, like you see on TV, head to toe bruises. I did not know that the laws had changed, because when my mom went through that, the police were like, we have to see it or it didn't happen. I thought the laws were still like that. So I was just determined to continue to walk on eggshells, try to keep a newborn as quiet and comfortable as possible, and try to keep said husband as quiet and comfortable as possible. Literally overnight, true colors came flying out. When he was not at home, he would just talk about Josh like, this is my son, he's so awesome. And I'm like, but you don't act like that at home. So we ended up having 2 more children, but Josh and I, as time went on, became his targets. Like, he became screaming, that type of monster. But as far as the physical stuff, it was a very, very slow progression on that one. There was one time he was talking to me. Next thing I know, he is straight face, talking like this, but has me up against a wall with a lighter to my face. The forms of abuse that he did to me was not what you see in the movies. I wasn't punched, I wasn't kicked. And he would do things to me that he was like, I'm joking. Why can't you take a joke? I would be like sitting on the bed trying to get ready for work or something. The next thing I know, he's cupping my nose and my mouth where I couldn't breathe with all his might, put his hand on me. And as I'm thrashing around and literally having this whole out-of-body experience, like all of a sudden, as he knew he was about ready to kill me, he would take his hand off and go, oh, you don't have any fun. But again, I'm thinking I'm not bruised, I'm not being kicked. He's about ready to kill me several times. And then there was a couple of times I would be sleeping and I snore and I would wake up and there was a pillow on my face. And then one time he did grab my arm and left like a little bitty bruise, and a coworker had happened to see this and she started documenting for me. She was like, your demeanor is changing, like, what's going on at home? And I'm like, but I'm not battered. I think our big turning point that I started to see, like, he is off the deep end, is 2006. I got diagnosed with thyroid cancer. I had to go through having my thyroid removed, and then right away they don't put you on medication because you have to go back for another screening. So my body was crashing, but he wasn't working. I was supposed to still go to work. And then I think I even at some point picked up a second job. But all the while then I was gone too much from home. I was a bad mom. The bills were not being paid enough. And so I'm fighting cancer. I'm having to work 2 jobs. And now I'm a bad mom because I'm having to work 2 jobs because he wasn't working. My fateful night where I was like, I've got him now. I woke up with a pillow over my face. He ends up reaching under his pillow and he had one of those Japanese dagger knife type of thing. He basically used it and was tracing my body up and down and saying, I could literally cut you and they wouldn't even find you. Just whispering like these really, really demonic things. And I'm going, what is happening? He had completely snapped. He ended up forcing me to have sex. I just remember it ending and I'm laying there and I'm going, what in the world? But the first thing that came to my mind was, I've got you now. I had to go to work. I was the front desk manager. I somehow pulled myself together, went to work, acted like everything was normal. Thankfully, I ended up training a girl that was just started that day, and I told her what happened. I go, I really don't think I'm battered, and she was like, oh my gosh, he basically threatened to kill you. And she goes, this is like, you need to get out. And she put me in touch with one of our battered women's shelters, and they were like, we can come get you right now and we can safely go get your kids. And I was like, no, I need time. Very long story short, the battered women's shelter taught me how to secretly pack. I told my dad, I said, hey, you need to find a new place because Saturday this is going down and most likely he's going to jail, or at the very least, the kids and I are out of here. Saturday came, and then that's where I found out laws had changed. I didn't even have to stay in the marriage for as long as I did. They were like, we don't know if we can arrest him because this happened 2 weeks ago, but we can definitely get you and the kids out. And I said, okay, well, he has that knife because for 2 weeks he still had that dagger. And they said, give us your apartment key, we're going in. I'm in the cop car and you hear them bust into my apartment, and it apparently took them about 5 officers plus tasing him to hold him down. The judge basically was like, we could sentence him to 5 years in prison, but I was like, if he gets out, I want him out of our state. And I know that he did get out, and then he was gone for years. And at this time, the divorce is going on, and he kept stalling out on the divorce because he was wanting, versus talking to my attorney on the phone, he was like, no, email me. And then he would take months to respond to her. So when the divorce finally happened, by that time we had a restraining order against him. We ended up having to come up with a visitation plan, but we made it really hard. And I always told the kids, if you ever feel unsafe, you never have to go. So I talked to the kids, and the kids said no. He texted me on a Friday morning, do they want to come? And I said no, and we have not seen him since. I share my story because I believe in love. I believe in second chances. I believe God can bring beauty from ashes, and I believe in the power of forgiveness for yourself